All right, I have 6 o'clock on my computer here, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today is August the 18th, 2020. The Lawrence Board of Zoning Appeals is called to order at this time. By roll call vote, we will determine a quorum. Rebecca Lytle?
Here.
Tom Crouch?
Has joined the conference.
Tom Crouch? Stephen Hall?
Here.
Eugene West? Eugene West? Desmond Woods? Desmond Woods?
Sorry, Eugene West, present.
Thank you, Eugene. Mark Sanders?
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum present. We have 4 of the 5 members. Our alternate will be voting tonight. Want to also read. If you've not done so, anyone wishing to speak tonight does need to sign in at the back of the room. And then I need you to stand and raise your right hand, please.
Brenda Creighton has joined the conference.
Tom Crouch
has joined the conference.
Hi, Tom. I've got you present now.
okay. Yours, Renee.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please answer with I do. Thank you.
I do.
Okay, we're going to need a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes from July 21st, 2020.
So moved. This is Steve.
Thank you, Stephen. Do I have a second?
Tom will second.
And we're going to do roll call vote. Becky Lytle?
Yay.
Tom Crouch?
Yay.
Stephen Hall?
Yay.
Eugene West?
Yay.
Mark Sanders? Oh, yeah.
Yay.
Okay, the minutes are passed. Next on our agenda, do we have any special requests, continuance, withdrawals, or waivers? Hearing none, we'll go on to old business, which we have none. So we're going to move to new business. Petition 20 LUV 07 for 9905 East 63rd Street. A variance of use to allow for portions of the property to be utilized as part of a landscaping contractor company in addition to other residential uses. Petitioner, if you'd like to present your case. Do you want to, also, just so that we're clear on what the rules and everything are, anybody who wants to speak will have to come up here so that it can be part of the record and speak into this microphone. Set it over there so we can maintain our distance. The petitioner will have 10 minutes to present their case. Remonstrators will have 10 minutes, and that's as a group, so you don't each get 10 minutes. It's the entire group of remonstrators will have 10 minutes. I did receive a number of emails. I'm going to read those before we have the remonstrators come up. So if you sent me an email in the last few days, I am going to read that. Then Larry Calloway from Marion County DMD will state his position. The City of Lawrence position.
Brenda Creighton left the conference.
What? Larry's not here. I've got a staff report. I can read it. I will give the City of Lawrence's position. The petitioner will have 5 more minutes for a rebuttal, and then we'll allow 5 more minutes for the remonstrators to rebuttal. And then the board will vote. Okay? Go ahead, Russell.
Thank you. Members of the board, my name is Russell Brown, an attorney with the law firm of Clark Quinn Moses Scott and Grand, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. And with me tonight is Colin Thompson, who's the owner of the subject property and the proprietor of Copper Canyon Landscape Design, a family-owned small business which has operated on this property since approximately 2015. The property at issue is 9905 East 63rd Street, is what we believe to be the historic Watson Farm, which gave name to the Watson Farm subdivision, which borders the property on the east and the south. On the west side is a drive aisle for Fall Creek Valley Middle School, and on the north side of 63rd Street, you have approximately 5 properties directly across the street. 2 of the 3 primary structures on the property have been there for as long as aerial photography is available in Marion County, which is approximately 1937. The trees on the perimeter of the property were planted and the white fence erected by the developers of Watson Farms, protecting the view out from the subject property in the mid-1990s. When Mr. Thompson and his family bought the property and moved there in 2015, the structures on the property had several challenges, some of which still exist today. Unfortunately, the cost to repair a historic barn is not insignificant, so not all of those repairs have yet been made. The use issue has been on the place on the property since Mr. Thompson bought it. He mistakenly and admittedly naively assuming that a DA property could be used for this home base for his landscaping company. To be clear, what Mr. Thompson's company does is landscape design and installation. They do not do lawn mowing and fertilization. They do residential and commercial landscape and outdoor design and installation. Some equipment and job materials are stored on site, but there are no fertilizers or chemicals stored there. The employees report to work on 63rd Street, pick up equipment and materials for the day, and leave for their job sites. At the end of the day, the employees return to 63rd Street and leave for the day. As part of the variance of use, the petitioner has submitted a plan of operation as required, which will govern the ongoing use of that property, which is included in the staff report. Also in the staff report is a site plan, which is paid for 5 of the materials. That site plan would also govern any approval given tonight. A couple items of note. As noted, the matter was heard last year before a previous iteration of this BZA. That request included a variance for fence height. There were concerns raised about the view off-site and other permitted uses on the site. As part of the efforts to show progress towards overcoming concerns of the neighbors and to show the ability to make changes discussed last year, a couple of things we'll point out. First, a solid fence has been installed on the subject property, which shields the view of those from the south to see the area where storage of materials and vehicles occurs and where employees park during the day. Second, trees have been planted south of that fence to further buffer the view of properties from the south. The staff report indicates there are a few trees which may need to be replaced to bring the property into compliance, which can be accomplished. As a reminder, those trees existing, we believe, were planted by the Watson Farms developer in order to protect the view out from the subject property due to the dramatic change occurring at the development of Watson Farms. We believe these efforts by the petitioner are substantial and create a change in condition between last year's petition and today. The view of adjoining neighbors has been improved at sizable cost to the petitioner in an effort to further and on an immediate basis make an improvement to the most impacted neighbors. The second important point on the site plan, we believe, is that you'll see that more than 50% of this lot remains as open space. The open space abuts the majority of properties which are located adjacent here. In fact, the open space abuts 7 of the 9 residential properties which back up to Mr. Thompson's property. Today's petition is tied to that site plan, so it cannot be legally enlarged or changed without coming back through a public hearing process. We believe that is also significant. We have various conditions included in the plan of operation that we believe these commitments would address various worst-case scenarios included in the staff report, and which will undoubtedly be presented by the remonstrators. We have limitations on hours and scope of on-site operation, limitation on number of employees and employee vehicles on site, limitations on the place where loading of tools can be loaded, and a limitation that this variance will be tied to this business by this owner. We believe those are significant limitations and prevent the type of heavy traffic, noise, and dust which were speculated about in the staff report. We'd remind you that this is an agriculturally zoned property. It allows for more intense uses than a normal dwelling district. It allows for large barns like the one here to be used and maintained. It allows for outdoor activities to occur, including outdoor kennel runs and other animal-related uses which we may are more intense than what's requested here. The site fronts on 63rd Street, is adjacent to an educational facility which has outdoor activity areas, in which literally dozens of buses visit at least twice a day, and hundreds of cars, including me, when I drop my 7th grader off there, visit several days a week. While 63rd Street is not a major thoroughfare, it is hardly an insignificant right-of-way in our city. The use here, we believe, can be conducted without negatively impacting any adjacent users. In the meantime, in the time Mr. Thompson has owned the property, He's had no direct complaints regarding his business use. The complaint which started this zoning matter was regarding the burning of refuse. We do have a number of letters of support that I can provide to the file, but those included 4 adjacent users to the north, as well as one of the properties immediately to the south, which has the second largest property line here. We also have 1 neighbor in attendance this evening in support. We believe that the property has been dramatically improved in the last, over the last year. There were complaints last year regarding a variety of issues, many of which did not go to the subject of the variance petition. But regardless, many of those issues have been remedied. I have pictures that I can submit to the file for that, to show that. The pictures show how we have outdoor storage screened. We have a balance of the property remaining open and cleaned up. We believe that limiting the proposal as is before you today allows for the coexistence of this use along with the use of those adjoining residential properties. We have, in our proposed findings of fact, believe that we have met the statutory criteria for the reasons there. We've provided that extra statutory finding related to a change on the property in the petition since the matter was considered last year as well, and would respectfully disagree with staff that the investment of the petitioners in shielding nearby properties from the use was not substantial an investment or a change in what's coming before you this evening. With that, we would incorporate those materials into the record, including our proposed findings. Ask for your favorable vote this evening to allow this local family-owned business to utilize this highly visible and historic property in a way that fits in with its unique location and history in our community. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions that the board has.
Mr. Russell, I would be interested in the pictures, please. Thank you.
The pictures are under tab 2, and so I apologize that I did not get electronic copies of this before, so that all board members can see it.
Okay, I do have some questions for you, Mr. Russell. When we heard this case last year, there was issues with the drainage, okay? It was at that time it was brought to our attention that they did not get the proper permits for that, correct? Correct? Okay. And then we, at that time, the board did not approve the variance, but the business continued, okay? They have been reported downtown, and I was going to ask Larry why they have not been cited. My question is, he says he's going to do these commitments and everything, but how do I know that that will happen when he didn't honor our wishes last year when we said that the variance wasn't granted?
So there's a couple components to that question. I'll try to answer all of them. First, as it relates to drainage, I saw the materials that were provided and some of the objections that were provided in last year's case. Any of those offending items have been removed. That was not intended to be drainage. That was intended to assist with keeping moisture down in those areas that are shaded by those trees. But those have been removed, so those pipes no longer exist there on the property where they did previously. This matter there was the filing of a request for judicial review of your decision last year. Typically, that has allowed businesses to, or properties not in compliance to continue to operate while that has occurred. I was not involved in that, but I know that occurred and was ultimately dismissed. At the time that I became retained, we advised the client that they could not file this matter, refile this matter until more than a year had passed from your previous decision, and so we at that point went forward with that. They have continued to communicate with code enforcement. There is an active code enforcement case on this matter. Tim Altum is the inspector assigned to it, and they've continued to communicate.
Left the conference.
They've continued to communicate with the inspector about the fact that they were planning to file for a rezoning, an additional variance request. And at that point, the inspector was okay with them continuing to operate so long as they met that obligation. So we've kept the inspector advised as we've gone through the process.
Okay, were you aware of this, Renee?
No.
Okay. Now, what about the barn that's about ready to fall down?
The smaller barn, yeah, the desire there is, of the petitioner is to, there are still repairs that need to be made on site. Obviously, the roof to the historic barn has some issues that need to be repaired as well. The intent of the petitioner is, when those repairs are completed, that any product or any material stored in the small barn would be moved to the second floor of the historic barn, and that small structure would be removed. That's the intent of the petitioner. And I can tell, I looked at pictures from last year's hearing, and I would say that the view of what's in that, or how that barn looks off-site, has changed dramatically, even for the small barn. It's covered, all the openings are covered, so that it's not something that someone off-site can look in and see into the barn as it exists. But the intention is to remove the small barn.
Has joined the conference.
Tom back on.
Tom's back.
Okay, thank you.
Do any other board members have any questions for the petitioner?
I do not.
Okay, hearing none, I'm going to start reading all these remonstrance emails.
Could I ask for fair play on that? We have letters of support that were
Sure, if you want to go first.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll just indicate, as I indicated in my case in chief, there were letters of support. We have 7 letters of support. They all contain the same information, but say that I am writing as a nearby or abutting neighbor in Lawrence Township. We're in support of the pending use variance, which allows for the continued operation of a landscaping business. Based on the filed commitments and plan of operation, we reviewed the proposed plan, commitments, and feel the proposed use will add value to the surrounding neighborhoods. We therefore recommend approval of this petition as filed. And that comes from property owners with the following addresses: 6358 Pleasant Woods Lane, 9936 East 63rd Street.
Hold on, sorry.
That's all right.
Woods Lane.
They're all
99,
36 East 63rd,
okay.
9906 East 63rd,
Eugene West.
Left the conference.
6350 Pleasant Woods Lane, 9914 Wellcroft, 9940 Wellcroft, and 9952 Wellcroft.
Twickenham, says Odom Court.
Do you have anything off of Odom Court?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
The Wellcroft ones are shown in the materials, and they include the property which abuts both Fall Creek Valley Middle School and the subject property. And then the 63rd Street addresses are two addresses immediately across the street, immediately north, as well as on Pleasant Woods, the property that is immediately on that corner, that hard corner.
Well, Mr. Russell, I will let you know that I have requested that Renee give us a map.
Okay.
And to identify where all the remonstrators' letters are. So that's why I'm asking you where.
Why I provided you the same thing.
Well,
Joined the conference.
and after I did that map, we received several more that I didn't have a chance to map,
That's fine.
so. Sorry, I had to stop opening remonstrance so that I could. So the first one I'm going to read is from a Scott Adams. I live in the Watson Farms community. I am against the petition for variance of use from agriculture to commercial property at 9905 East 63rd Street, where the old Watson Farms is located. This area is all residential, and we don't want a commercial company in the middle. Increased traffic, decreased safety for our children, an eyesore and an overall negative impact on this area. The owner of Copper Canyon, Colin Thompson, was issued an order from the City of Indianapolis and City of Lawrence to stop the landscape operation in the fall of 2019. Copper Canyon has not stopped operations, and this simply proves he does not follow the rules that are already in place. Please do not grant this variance, and please enforce the order to stop operations already in place. Thank you and best regards. The second one I'm going to read is from Anderson. Sorry, it takes a minute because I'm on a MiFi. Okay. Oh, there it goes. This is from Brad Anderson. Dear Lawrence Board,
Left the conference.
Lawrence Zoning Board and Appeals, I am saddened to have to write this letter as I'm a proponent of free enterprise and business in general. In this case, I don't feel that business has any place in this neighborhood. They generate a lot of traffic for large trucks pulling trailers and in general don't keep up their property very well. Also, I am of the opinion the values displayed by this company do not represent the values this community deserves or expects. Many times I've been in the left turn lane southbound on Lee Road when one of these large trucks makes a northbound turn onto Lee Road. Due to their length, they have to swing wide in order to not go off the side of the road. As I sat there waiting for the turn arrow, I have cringed, wondering if these monstrosities were going to hit my car. Might I be injured as the wheels roll over the remains of my car should I brace for impact? The all-black Ram dually pickup with the lift kit is the most intimidating. It reminds me of the angry combine Frank from the original Cars movie that terrorizes tractors and cars alike with its menacing appearance. And these vehicles regularly pass 2 Lawrence Township school zones in less than a half a mile. Just the other day when I drove past there were 4 or 5 large trucks, almost all of them with trailers, all lined up in the semicircular driveway in front of the barn, preparing to depart for the assignments
Has
for the
joined
day.
the conference.
Wait, I thought this business had been ordered to cease and desist operations from this facility. Why would there be this level of activity from a business order to stop this type of activity? For being a landscape business, one would think they would keep their business looking good. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. In fact, that was one of the reasons cited when the request for variance was denied last year. Sure, they have made a few aesthetic additions, but what about the existing things in disrepair, like the white wooden fence around the exterior of the property that hasn't been painted for years? What an eyesore. And then there's the area of tall grass, mostly weeds, that grows unabated between the sidewalk and the street on the eastern edge of the property along 63rd Street. Why are we even here listening to this request? A business operating illegally for multiple years and flouting laws the rest of us live with is back asking us to change our neighborhood and to let them do what they want and desecrate the area and lower our property values. My vote is no. And when this variance is denied again tonight, they will be allowed to go on operating illegally at the same location as they have over the last year. What will Lawrence and the city of Indianapolis do differently this time to prevent this travesty of justice? And the next one I'm going to read is from Briggs. Hello, as residents of Watson Farms subdivision, we are sending this email to say that we are against the petition for variance of use from agriculture to commercial property by the owners at 9905 East 63rd Street, where the old Watson Farms is located. To save our home values and reduce many additional negative impacts to the neighborhood, we do not support this variance. This is all residential, and we stand with our Watson Farms neighbors and not wanting a commercial company in the middle of it that increases traffic, reduces safety for our children, and is an eyesore. Thank you, Donna and Tressette Briggs. Next one is from the Caseys. Good. I am sending this message to express my disapproval for an appeal by Copper Canyon Landscaping. A year ago, both the City of Lawrence and the City of Indianapolis issued an order to Colin Thompson, the owner of Copper Canyon, to cease operation of the landscaping company in the residential location it is located in. They have ignored that order and continued operation to this day. Below are the reasons my household are objecting to the variance. Number one, the owner has shown that he willfully will not follow legal city ordinance by continuing business when ordered to cease. Number two, a business in this location would decrease home values in ours and surrounding neighborhoods by increasing traffic and creating an eyesore at the entry of the neighborhood. Three, the increased traffic so close to both an elementary and middle school would negatively impact our children. Four, the noise alone from this company splitting boulders late into the evening causes anxiety issues with residents' pets. It sounds like an explosion of M80 fireworks. A business located in the center of 3 different residential neighborhoods will decrease our home values. Thank you for your time in reviewing this matter. The next one is from the Creightons. I am a homeowner in Watson Farms. I built my house in 1996. I am absolutely opposed to the potential rezoning for obvious reasons. Decrease in property value, congestion, health hazards, just to name a few. It's a shame that homeowners have to worry about this type of BS intruding into our lives. If the neighborhood goes down and people like me who are able to bounce leave, you will have another rundown community like 42nd and Post Road area. Sincerely, Mrs. Creighton. Next one's from Crowell. Takes a minute. Can I ask everybody on the line to put their phones on mute? Please. I would like to voice my opposition to the zoning variance being requested for Copper Canyon Landscaping. Mr. Thompson has not followed any of the previous rulings from the City of Lawrence. He has continued to operate his business from this location. He started with pickup trucks and trailers. Now he has work trucks specific for his business. He has a full parking lot in the back, which I have the pleasure of seeing every time I look out my window. His trucks sit a mere 45 yards from my bedroom window. I hear his workers throwing equipment into them before they leave in the morning. He allows the vehicles to idle until they are ready to leave. There are 2 barns on this property. The smaller one appears to be ready to fall over at any time. The larger barn is losing its roofing. You can hear the metal roof clanking when there is a strong storm. Mr. Thompson has followed a pattern. You can tell when he is going to attempt to get the zoning changed. He cleans he cleans up his property. When it's over, he goes back to letting the weeds grow along the fence line with Watson Farms. This fence has not been cared for since the Watsons owned the property. He also has many dying trees. I am afraid one of the largest will end up in my dining room. This is a quiet neighborhood. Please leave it that way. I built my house because the Watsons Farms was behind me. They lovingly cared for the whole property. It was like a Norman Rockwell painting. It's a nightmare now. Who wants to be awakened every morning to look at a parking lot and a weed patch? Who would want to buy our house if I were to sell it? I wouldn't. Sincerely, Robin Kim Crowell. That address was, I had to look it up. It's one of the ones right there that borders it. Yes, ma'am. I don't think he gave me the address. Hold on, I'm going to double check it. Yeah, he didn't give me an address. 9918 Thank you. It's one of the ones in back right up to it.
Got it.
The next one I'm reading is from Fenig. This is 6010 Honeywell. Please accept this email as my letter to support that the Lawrence Board of Zoning Appeals should not approve their appeal for continued operations. They were previously denied variance, and this denial needs to be upheld. This commercial company would affect property values, traffic, and overall residential quality of all close by neighborhood areas. They should actually be fined for continued operations in spite of being denied this variance by the zoning commissioners to operate their business. They need to move their business to an area already zoned as commercial and leave our neighborhood alone. Next one is Fields. Hello, and thank you for taking my email concerning the petition for variance of use from agriculture to commercial property at 9905 East 63rd Street, the old Watson Farms. My family and I do not support this request. This area is residential, not commercial. There are many families here who live in peace and quiet, and I'm sure wish to remain so. Truck traffic in and out of the area is already heavy, and there is already much additional traffic in the area with the 2 schools and other subdivisions. Also, a longer-term issue could exist if the variance is approved. What if the current owner sells the property someday and instead of a landscape business, a small factory is built next to Watson Farms and Craig Middle School? I don't want the value of my home as well as my neighborhood to drop. Me and my family want to live in peace and as much quiet as possible. The owners of Copper Canyon, I'm sure, are very hardworking and deserve our respect and support for their business, but the current location of the old Watson Farm is not the place for a commercial business. This area is residential and schools. Next one on the list is Ford. Good afternoon. I am a resident of Watson Farms. I do not support Copper Canyon conducting business in my neighborhood. This is a heavy populated neighborhood with walkers, bike riders, children, and 2 schools right next door. This company will drive down the property and the loud noise, heavy trucks, machinery will destroy the roads, dirty the area, and most importantly, bring more traffic and become less safe. If this company has already ignored Indianapolis and Lawrence officials advising them to stop operations, the company will continue this practice and do even worse. I do not want my property value to be negatively impacted. Next one is Gasco Ranger. I am writing asking that you do not allow this variance to go through for the old Watson Farm, 9905 East 63rd Street. This is already an eyesore. They are not taking care of the property, and who wants to live next door to that if made into an official landscaping company property? Please, you need to think if you live next to that property or in that subdivision, it will impact us in a negative way. They have no consideration for children in the area with the way the trucks pull in and out of there. Huge safety concern. They are still operating out of there when I believe they were told not to, and if you approve it, it will only be a dump. They have a barn falling apart and it looks horrible. If they do not follow the rules now, I can just imagine what will pile up there if you approve. It will stink and even be a worse eyesore than what it is now. Please put your feet in our shoes and ask yourself, would you want this on your block, next to you, or even in your subdivision? Or if your children or grandchildren were playing or walking to school with the way the trucks speed off, I can answer that for you, no. So please do not make it part of our subdivision and shut this down once and for all, and let's move forward from this. How does one take a historical place and turn it into a dump? One who doesn't care about the property or anyone else's, only cares about the mighty dollar and what he can gain, and only he. Please, again, I beg that you do not allow this variance to go through. The next one is Glenn. Hi, I have been a lifelong resident of Lawrence and have lived in Watson Farms for 7 years. I do not agree with the business wanting to be built in my neighborhood with the schools right there. This will cause a lot of problems in this residential area. My kids walk to school, and this also makes me more concerned for their safety. There are no sidewalks, and this will cause more traffic and potential harm from their safety, along with other safety concerns. Why would a business want to be in the middle of a neighborhood? There are many other commercially zoned locations for them to be in. Please stop this and consider the children and families' health and safety. And I'm probably going to say this name wrong, Grishaber. This letter is in regards to the Copper Canyon rezoning appeal to be heard on the 18th at 6 p.m. We've been living in Watson Farms for 20 years and have seen this property on 63rd Street go from a nice farmhouse and yard to a rundown landscaping, a chipped-up painted fence, barn roof collapsing, and a business that is running out of a residential area against a zoning decision that was denied. Since it was denied, Copper Canyon has gone ahead and kept their business running. In addition, they claim they live there in the home, which is not true at all. The only activity that happens on their property is their storage of mulch, rocks, work vehicles, and employee parking. We have made many complaints to the zoning committee about how they are still operating and the area is run down. However, nothing has been done. We are not in favor of the Copper Canyon running their business here and dragging down our property values. For the people that live with the landscaping company in their backyard are affected the most. However, their fence butts up to our entrance fence coming into the neighborhood. The fence is in bad shape and has been in need of painting for the last 5 years. We would like the zoning committee to deny their request and shut this business down in a residential community. Next one is from Hatcher. We're almost done. Sorry. Y'all get to listen to my voice. Let's see, Hatcher. I live at 9918 Hard Key Circle. I denied the zoning they trying to change. I'm against it, not with the changes. Thank you. Next one is Johnston. My name is Lloyd Johnston, and I live in Watson Farms at 10134 Pendula Drive. We have lived here for almost 24 years and want to express to you that I oppose the variance from agricultural to commercial property at 9905 East 63rd. Thank you for your consideration. Next is Lee. Dear committee, I'm writing this letter to state I am against the variance for Copper Canyon Landscaping. It's unfortunate that after all this time, the business continues to run in a residential area. Although they have now hidden equipment behind a fence, which is a plus, they would still be setting a precedent for which I am completely against. More unfortunate that the variance was denied, taken to court and withdrawn, and then brought back to the zoning committee again after the city of Lawrence and Indianapolis had closed the request. It seems to me that the subject was already decided and the Copper Canyon plans to run a continuous loop until they get what they want. Is there no enforcement? Do we need to keep addressing that there are no other businesses in the area and how close it is to school, to the fort and wildlife, etc.? I appreciate the zoning committee's time and consideration. Next is remonstrance from Lewis. I am a resident of Watson Farms at 6620 Twickenham Drive. We are Hale Lewis and Geraldine Lewis. We have been here for 26 years. We do not support this variance due to our home values. This is all residential, and we don't want a commercial company in the middle, increased traffic, safety for our children, and an eyesore. This would be a negative for this area. Myers Johnson. I am sending an email in regards to commercial property. I do not support this variance due to our home values. This is all residential and we don't want a commercial company in the middle. Increased traffic, safety to our children, an eyesore and overall negative for this area. Patterson is next. After this one, we have 8 more, so we're getting there. Let's see. I am writing as a resident of Watson Farms. I am very much against Lawrence Board and Zoning approving the appeal that has been I think that was supposed to be made, that has been requested. I feel it will decrease my property value. Thanks for listening to my concern against allowing this to continue. Perkins. Should have left them all in my inbox. We recently received a letter from our Watson Farms HOA. The letter urged us to send a letter saying do not support this variance. Honestly, I would rather the information be supplied and I can decide for myself. However, we are unable to attend the meeting this evening. Our property backs up to Colin Thompson's property and we haven't had any issues with him or his business. He has an old barn in terrible condition on his property. Would this barn be repaired and used for the business if granted the variance? I do not like to suppress someone's business's livelihood Is it possible for a one-year variance to be considered and then reassessed in a year? I do not totally support the variance, but I don't totally oppose it either. Next one is Renholzberger. Where'd it go? Hold on, I lost it. I am writing as a nearby neighbor to Lawrence Township. Once again, Colin Thompson has filed for an appeal variance for the said property, 9905 East 63rd Street. At this time, my wife and I are still not in support of the appeal variance. It has been a year since the second variance was not approved, but operations of his business has continued. Based on the information given to us by the owner, Colin Thompson, at 9905 East 63rd Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, after recently again reviewing his proposal, we do not feel this should be approved. Nothing is improved on the property as of August 12, 2020. The property has not been maintained. It is obvious that business continues to operate without zoning board approval. We still feel that continued operation of this business would not be beneficial to our surrounding neighborhood, community, and it would decrease value to our property and homes. And this truly affects the entire area. We do not recommend approval of this petition as filed. Schroeder. Huh?
Did it just die?
Well, I think it's just,
The Wi-Fi?
yeah, it's the Wi-Fi. There it goes. My family owns a home in Watson Farms. We've lived here for 9 years now. We think this family and their company should be left to run their business and make a living. In this day and age, it's hard enough to do that without people trying to shut you down. It may not be ideal for the property owners who back up to this piece of land, but life is not always ideal. Please let the owners continue their business. They live on Sand Cherry. I saw you looking at the map. Next one is from Schumann. Dear Committee, I'm writing this letter to state I am against the variance for Copper Canyon Landscaping. It is unfortunate that after all this time, the business continues to run in a residential area. Although they have now hidden equipment behind a fence, they are still continuing to operate without penalty. More unfortunate that the variance was denied, taken to court and withdrawn, and then brought back to the zoning committee again after the city of Lawrence and Indianapolis had closed the request. It appears, I'm sorry, I lost my spot. It seems to me that the subject was already decided in the Copper Canyon business plans to run a continuous loop until they get what they want while continuing to operate their business in a residential area illegally and without approval. As a neighbor with property value concerns, I ask these questions. Is there no enforcement to shut down this business? Has the property been inspected to ensure no chemical dumps are occurring? Do we need to keep addressing that there are no other businesses in the area? I can't imagine a variance would be allowed for this property to operate so close to a school. Will the Lawrence Police also review employees for sex offender registry, especially since the business continues to operate without approval adjacent to 2 schools? Furthermore, the Fort State Park is yards from this location. Has the Fort Reuse Authority been aware of this ongoing issue? We've only heard of this situation through word of mouth from our neighbors. Who was responsible for notifying the rest of our neighborhood? The owner is also soliciting approval from adjacent neighbors with a letter ready to sign. Why couldn't the city send a letter in our water bills about this with the pros and cons so our neighbors could make an informed decision? We know that there are several owners in this neighborhood that will move if this is approved, and this will only serve to drive down the property values in this area. I appreciate the zoning committee's time and consideration reviewing this important matter. Thank you for all that you do to make our city a great place to live. I have 2 from Simpson. I'm not sure if they're the same one. I got them at different times, so I saved them, but we'll read them anyway. One came at 4:15 and the other at 5:02, so I didn't have time to actually read them. As a resident of Watson Farms, I am sending this letter to voice my opposition to a zoning variance for Copper Canyon to operate a landscaping business on 63rd Street. My family has lived here for 25 years, and we do not want to see this business so close to our community. My property backs up to the middle school and is close to the location. I am concerned about the added noise, pollution, traffic, and what negative impact it may have on our property values and entire community. It is also my understanding that the owner was told to stop operations on the property, but has ignored that direction from the city. If that is true, then I am really concerned about what other ordinances they would also ignore. Thank you for your consideration. That was from a Jackie Simpson. The other Simpson is a different Simpson. Please share that as a resident of Watson Farms neighborhood, we are completely against the Copper Canyon variance that's being heard tonight. Our position has not changed from the very beginning of this issue, going back to the beginning. That was a Mike and Christy Simpson that sent that one. 2 more, guys. Then we can move on. This one's from Snipes. There we go. I would like to express my concern in not supporting the variance of use from agriculture to commercial property at 9905 East 63rd Street. I cannot and do not support this variance due to our home values. This is residential, and we do not want a commercial company in the middle. This will do nothing more than lower our home values, increasing traffic, which is already excessive due to cut-through traffic, as people already do not obey the stop signs and speed limit. We are concerned about the safety of the children. It is an eyesore and overall is a negative impact for our neighborhood. We want to be able to maintain and increase our property values, and with the approval of this variance, we will not be able to do so. We vote against supporting the petition for this variance. And the last one I have is from Strauss. open one like this, I'm gonna save them all in my emails and that way I don't have to. All right, we do not wish anything bad on others, only the best. If the owner would have done his homework up front before purchasing the location to try and operate a commercial business, this wouldn't be taking place. Prior to purchasing this property, I believe he ran his business out of a much smaller home in a neighborhood and simply thought this would work without doing some upfront research. However, this variance request is something that is simply not good for the residential neighbors and the schools in the area. The variance was denied to Copper Canyon was to cease operations. However, that did not happen at all. Why should we believe anything he says? His actions speak much louder. He has accumulated much more landscape materials than originally stated. If this is passed with no future oversight by Indianapolis, he will be able to do anything with no repercussions. We don't need to see more from the city checking in on the property. I'm not sure if that's a typo. It's DON. We don't need to see more from the city checking in on the property to ensure the operation is not able to continue in this area. This has nothing personal against the owner, just the operation. We hope for the best when he moves this operation to a proper designated commercial zone property. Again, the minor improvements do not help offset all the issues and reasons this is not good for the area. We would see our home values go down if this is allowed to continue. Noise, smell, possible ongoing drainage issues, traffic, eyesore, etc., along with large supplies of residential hazardous materials, a much larger supply than one homeowner would have on hand. We appreciate your time and consideration to please deny the variance for hundreds of homeowners and children that live in this area. Okay, now those are all the emails that I received in the last few days regarding the case. Next on our agenda would be Larry from DMD.
No? Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Renee,
Yes, sir.
Renee,
Yes.
this is Tom. Before you go to Larry, there were so many letters from both you and Russ. Did any of them, none of them came from Watson Farms Homeowners Association, did they?
No, I got so busy reading all those emails. Their attorney is here.
They're here.
To speak, and we was actually going to call them up before Larry. So I was going to have them come up next.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay,
Okay, good.
Let the-
I just wanted their position. Thank you.
okay. Let the board know. Do they want to know the houses that Russell had
Did you guys all get the addresses of the houses that were in support, the 7 letters from the neighbors?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody need us to repeat those addresses? Okay,
No, not at this time.
so
Your
we'll,
map was very helpful that you sent out, Renee.
thank you, that was Becky's idea. So we're going to hear from any other remonstrators we have.
One of these for the record,
Yep.
one of these for your colleague. One for the record. And Sam. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name's Jeff Bellamy. I'm an attorney with offices at 151 North Delaware Street, and I'm here on behalf of my client, Watson Farms Homeowners Association. My firm and I have been their attorney for several years, starting with Steve Bushman before he retired, and then I was here with you, or some of you, last year on the 2019 case where you heard evidence and denied the matter when it was originally presented. If anybody's here in the audience that came in attendance tonight that's in opposition of this request, would you stand up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I count 19 heads of folks that did come out tonight. They are distanced, they are masked, so thank you for making the effort to come out tonight. they're in opposition of this request. This is probably a stronger output, or at least equal output, than what we had in 2019. I've looked at this. I think I concur with your zoning staff. I really can't see the deviation of what was presented in 2019 and what you've got presented tonight. There's a fence that's been added, and there's some very limited changes to a plan of operation. I gave you 3 exhibits. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get them to you before the session, but one is the 13 commitments from 2019 compared to the 13 commitments from 2020. The other is the site plan from 2019 compared to the site plan from 2020. I can't tell the difference, and I think the technical staff agrees with that. The evidence is pretty substantial that Copper Canyon, after the BZA took evidence last year, there were several continuances. The BZA hearing finally went on. BZA gave a lot of opportunity for evidence to be presented from both sides and decided unanimously against this request. We come back with substantially similar evidence and updating that evidence because there's been no meaningful change other than continued operations that have been unlawful. I'll respectfully disagree that if you file an appeal, you get to just keep going in court until the court makes a decision. You have to make an affirmative step, and that is ask for the decision to be stayed, that I can keep doing what I'm doing and keep the status quo, and that never happened. That case was dismissed pretty rapidly because Copper Canyon never submitted the BZA's record after they sued you. So that case terminated pretty rapidly, and they just continued to operate after that case was taken out of court. I have no idea what conversations have or haven't happened with the enforcement staff, but I do know there are Mayor's Action Center complaints that are in the record. Similar argument from 2019 was presented tonight. You could do a lot of intense things in a DA district, therefore why not just keep doing this? Well, this would be called a heavy service. A commercial contractor's called a heavy service, and it would be permitted in a C7 or any of the industrial districts. If properly zoned, you'd have to have some pretty heavy buffers and boundaries. And by contrast, the DA zoning does have some limited, more intense uses than residential, but nothing near as intense as running a industrial or a commercial contractor, which is what your ordinance requires. And nothing precludes them from just operating lawfully. That's really kind of been skipped and not really understood. They could just go ahead and operate lawfully. There's been no evidence since the last hearing presented to rebut the 3 letters that were submitted to you the first time. Tommy Roy Lance's letter, he is a licensed realtor with FC Tucker. Nancy Ali from Indiana Central Homes, also a licensed realtor, gave thoughtful comments. Their letters are back. Ronald Russell gave thoughtful comments. Their letters are back. All of them, including the staff, continue to believe this will have a negative and detrimental value on the adjacent properties, and we actually asked for updates from the 3, and 2 of them took the time to give us some more freebies. Ronald Russell came back and said he doesn't think that there's any meaningful change to what he had said before. His email is attached to the back. Tommy Roy Lance, unfortunately, we didn't get his until late this afternoon, but it's attached. And in a very prescient forecasting way, Mr. Roy Lance raises the question that the BZA has already raised. If this user is continued to operate after a denial, what value are the commitments? Those are Mr. Roy Lance's words in the email. I think we can echo those as to, I'm not sure what value the commitments hold given the history. And let's talk about the history. This was presented at the prior hearing. The reason this came to you is not because someone doing due diligence and saying, hey, I'd like to get right with this, I'd like to find out if this is something I can do. It's somebody found out they were doing something they weren't supposed to. And it wasn't just that it was an operational issue. They were cited for burning plywood, trash, and wood on the site. They were cited, that was 2017, cited again in 2018 for their operations and for their outdoor storage. I'm glad that it was brought forward by several others. I hadn't coordinated with those letter writers, but we had seen that in March of 2020, they advertised in the Indianapolis Flower and Patio Show ad, hey, we're Copper Canyon and we're out at 9905 East 63rd Street, and then also their Better Business Bureau designation. These are recent designations that they're still operating at this location. So have a hard time understanding, I think, along with the folks that submitted letters, as to why the original decision of the board wasn't honored. We presented evidence in 2019 that we've continued, that the letters or the photographs from the redevelopment or the changes of the site show in 2013 a very modest horseshoe-shaped drive onto 63rd Street, which then morphs in 2016 to a very large circular gravel drive to 2018 and on into the fall of 2019, where a quarter, perhaps a fifth, of the western side of the property has been put under gravel. Doesn't look like anything around here. Doesn't look like any other use around that has anything similar. The back of the gravel area is about 65 feet from Rick Wiles' back step, about 90 feet from Mr. Crowell's back step. I'd like to make sure there's time for them both to speak, because they can tell you what it's like living behind this. Mr. Wiles is going to have to speak to the issue of the drainage. The pipes did come out, but it's now sort of a dead area. There was a path there, and so it sort of impounds the water, still doesn't drain very well, but he can speak to it. The photos are presented. The most substantial issue, really, there's outdoor storage to a degree and a level that you really wouldn't find in a residential area like this. They bring leftover items from jobs and leave them on the site. Now they have put a fence in. They organize it somewhat more in a more uniform way. It's less pell-mell, but it's stacked pretty heavily behind this fenced area. You see the photographs from March of 2019, June of 2019 before the last hearing, and then you see last week, photo from August 16th on page 17, trailers, closed trailers, pallets of pavers, pallets of stone, another photo from August 16th looking into the site. There's not much area that isn't covered by some kind of pallet or just empty pallets. Pallets need to be moved. Pallets are a tool for moving these things, and so you need equipment to move these pallets. And I think Mr. Crowell can provide comments here in a moment. Why don't you go ahead and start coming up? He's a shift worker and has to deal with this. When they're starting their day, he's trying to end his day. Likewise, Copper Canyon hasn't really demonstrated the care and maintenance for the existing facilities. They've had a year. I understand fences are expensive. And they have put up a fence. But two pictures side by side, January of 2019, August of 2020, a week ago, that barn isn't in great shape. That barn has a substantial lean. And then likewise, we have January of 2019 with the other historic white barn. There were 3.5 pieces of sheet metal missing in the course of 8.5 months, 8 months, there are now 5 pieces of sheet metal missing. This barn is certainly not going in the right direction. At the end of the report, you can see the updated emails from R.J. Russell, where he reaffirms his issues with use and value. You can see after that the updated email from Tommy Roylance, where he specifically calls out the issue of no action being taken to cease the operations, that it gives him grave concerns that the owner, if given approval, will even follow through. So the original letters are attached. Also, the Excella reports for enforcement by the city are attached, and also the Secretary of State's printout for Copper Canyon showing 9905 East 63rd Street as their office and business location. Mr. Crowell, I'd like him to speak to the issue of what it's like to live behind the operation.
Good evening. My name is Robert Kroll. I live at 9918 Wellcroft Lane, which is directly behind the business. Basically, my house, he stated, was about 90 feet from the thing. I mean, essentially, his trucks are almost in my bedroom window. So I get to hear every morning when they start up.
What was your address, sir?
9918 Wellcroft Lane.
Sorry.
So I get to hear as his workers are coming in and throwing things in the back of these trucks. And they wake my wife up on the weekends. As you said, as you've heard, I am a shift worker. I am a respiratory therapist for IU Health. So I do come in late at night or early in the morning, and I'm awakened. I also wanted to rebut a couple of statements. I moved into my house in March of 1995. I had the pleasure of knowing Mr. and Mrs. Watson. There are many times I watched them plant those trees. I also watched them paint that fence. Mr. Watson paid to have the fence painted. Later on, after he passed away, his children and grandchildren painted that fence. It is his fence, along with his trees. And those trees are about all dead now, or dying, and they will end up on my house. One of them will. I'm sure one of them will probably end up in Rick's house, too. Rick could
These are
probably
the pine
speak.
trees, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I don't wish him any ill will, but I don't want his business back there. I don't know if you have any other questions you'd like to ask, or? Thank you.
Rick Wiles is coming up. Rick is the other owner that directly is adjacent from the gravel storage area.
Hi, my name's Rick Wiles. I live at 9922 Wellcroft Lane, right next to Rob. I did have a complaint about the track that was built around the outside edges and the drainage, but those pipes have been removed. The dirt has not really been a major problem. It does hold back some of the water into the grassy area instead of letting it flow down through the dirt and around the trees. I do have a problem with one of the addresses that are on their petition. 9940, I believe, is a rental property, and not sure who signed that petition, but it probably wasn't the owner of the house, since it's a corporately owned house. I can verify what Rob said about the trees. My wife and I and my son used to go over and talk with Tom and Dolores Watson on a nightly basis before the two of them passed away. We used to go over and pick the bagworms off the trees, and used to go over into Tom's garden and pick the tomatoes and stuff. We knew him very well. I come from a rural area. I looked at many sites before I built my house in beginning 1995. The only reason I built it where I did was because there was a 3.5 acre farm left behind me, and I didn't have to look out my kitchen window. So, I guess I would like to be able to look back out at that farm again, but I guess that will never be. And yes, within the next year or two, I will retire, and for this reason, I will sell the house and move. Thank you.
Thank you.
Renee, is that our 10?
Yes, ma'am. Or sir, I'm sorry. I'm tired. I've been here since 7 this morning. I'm
Thank you. I'm happy
getting
to
a little
answer
delirious.
Does the board have any questions?
Does the board have any questions?
I do not.
Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move on to Larry Calloway's staff report, which all of you have received a copy of. I am not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to hit the highlights.
No, well, I'm here, Renee.
Oh, Larry, I didn't hear you come in. You do your staff report then.
I'm here the whole time.
I'm sorry, I didn't even hear you come in.
Oh, I got a question for him.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Larry Calloway from the Department of Metropolitan Development, City of Indianapolis. Staff recommended denial of the previous variance in 2019, and we are recommending denial of this variance as well. Again, the concerns related to this type of use, a landscape contractor, include noise, associated with activities of loading and unloading, movement of the large trucks, heavy vehicles, exhaust from trucks idling while loading and unloading, sightly storage, dust generated by the movement of vehicles. I would note that, the large gravel area didn't exist prior to approximately 2017 or so. That was added sometime between 2016 and 2017. Before there's just a circular drive. If you go back to 95, there was no drive south of the barns at all. Again, so, we felt the unsightly storage of vehicles, trailers, and other equipment, including mulch, stone, et cetera, would be impactful to the area. Mulch piles themselves can also be odorous if not properly managed, and so that's a concern as well. But then, really the bigger issue this time is that, for staff, is that, this issue has already been decided. The board in 2019 looked at this request, which we feel is basically the same request, and decided it was not worthy of being approved. In 2019, the request was for a landscape contractor, which is what the request is today in 2020. The request included outdoor storage of materials, included outdoor storage of equipment. In 2019, they proposed a fence. This time the fence is existing, but it's still a fence. So a fence was at issue at both times. New trees are proposed in 2020 as they were in 2019. So we don't believe there's been any substantial change in the petition. And again, as the finding, the additional finding they're supposed to submit is to indicate what the substantial change has been, and we don't see any. And the reason that finding is required is because the courts have ruled over time that, once the board has made a decision, there's no reason for them to make the same decision over and over again. And that the matter has already been decided. And so, unless there's some substantial change, there's no reason for the board to make a different decision. Again, it was also noted that the site, being DA, could have kennels and things like that, which is true. I would note that kennels that have any outdoor animal exercise or boarding area have to be located at least 100 feet away from any dwelling district that's not zone DA. So from the east, from the south, and from the north, they would have to be at least 100 feet away from those adjacent zoning districts. Again, I'd also note that, a third to a half acre of the site is now gravel, where it hadn't been just 3 years or so prior. One other thing that had been brought up, I think one of the demonstrators mentioned a 1 year, in one of their letters, a 1 year variance being proposed. That was actually proposed in 2019. Again, if that was proposed today, that wouldn't be a substantial change in the petition. So for all those reasons, we recommend denial as we did in 2019, and we think the denial is even more strong this time because of that substantial change finding a fact that they have to meet, which we feel has not been met and cannot be met with this petition. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Larry, I have a question.
Sure.
They were operating for the year with us denying them, but yet Renee, along with other people, have reported it to the city. Why wasn't a stop work order put out? Did I say that correctly?
Well, yeah. Yeah, there was a violation that was open in 2018. That violation has remained open. There's been periodic review of that by the inspector. And it's hard to speak to, you know, when they made a decision to contact or to re-inspect or look at the situation, but just looking at the notes here, in some cases there were several months before there was additional information. Like for this year, in 2020, there was a contact on January 22nd, 2020, where they talked about that due to seasonality, the business wasn't really operational at that time. Then in February 25th, 2020, there was another email related to, I believe, a meeting that the owners of the business had with me, and we're meeting with Renee as well to discuss possible applying for a new variance. There's notes about that. And then in June, there's a notation that they sent a message to get an update about the site. And then there's another one in August about getting an update. But as to why there hasn't been further action, it's hard to say. It just talks about, you know, what are you doing? Is there, have you filed a variance? Have you, you know, just those kind of comments and things. But again, it's hard for me to answer. I don't know specifically what happened in between all those times.
Would anybody told them they could continue?
But there is an open violation case.
Would they have, Becky asked if anybody would have told them that they could continue operating while they were waiting to refile for that year?
Yeah, well, I think the inspector has a lot of discretion with that. Let me see if I see anything in these notes that say that. Okay, like November 15th, 2019, it says below is an email received on October 30th from representative for owner. Have met with current planning, will provide extension as they are still working to resolve violation. And then the rest of it just talks about how they with me and discuss how to file a variance or file for a waiver and things like that. So yeah, there is indication that they gave them extensions.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Like I
you.
said, but sure.
Does any other board member have questions for Larry? Okay, hearing none. The City of Lawrence position is next, and I've been directed by the administration to recommend denial for this petition. Sharon, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay, we just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity if you wanted it. Next on our thing, the petitioner can come up and give their final.
With respect, we had about 30 minutes of letters in opposition read into the record, and Mr. Bellamy used 15 minutes of time. Despite rules providing for 10, I'd respectfully ask for some additional leeway in my opportunity.
We'll give you a few extra minutes, no problem.
Thank you. Well, first I'll start and say that my first home in Lawrence was 6040 Honeywell Drive. So I lived in Watson Farms for 7 years. When I needed a home a few years ago on a short-term basis, I looked on Wellcroft Drive. So I'm very familiar with this neighborhood. I used to pay dues that paid Mr. Bushman. So very well aware of what's going on and where this is. I'll try to go through, I have literally a page of notes, but try to go through and rebut kind of comments throughout this process. There is almost every one of the emails, including the 2 letters, which I didn't, the undoubtedly refreshed letters not provided to us by opposing counsel, indicate would or speculative impact on property values. There is not a report provided, and the fact that this business has been operating here for a number of time would provide the opportunity to provide objective, verifiable data about impact on property values. That's not in the record. We think that's important, and that's an important component of what's going on here, is that there's a lot of speculation, quite frankly, a lot of hyperbole, and a lot of misinformation. Last year, there was a lot of discussion about whose obligation the Whitewood fence was. We believe that it was shown then, despite testimonies tonight, that that is not on the property of the petitioners. So that is not an obligation that they have or have entered into when they purchased this property in 2015. It was alleged that we have high weeds along 63rd Street. Those are actually native plants and grasses that are similar to what is located at Arts to Remember, which is at 59th and Lee, and what's located along Lee Road near Lee Road Park. That is a landscape mechanism. It is not weeds. There's not a high weed complaint related to those. It is aesthetically different, and I understand that, and some people may not like it, but it is not weeds, and I think the representation of that is unfair. I have a son, so I did watch the Cars movie. Calling Mr. Thompson's personal truck like Hank the mean diesel, I think is a little unfair. That's his personal vehicle, and to the fact that whether or not this variance is granted, that truck is not illegal, it's not improper, and would remain here to the extent Mr. Thompson's family continues to reside here. There's already discussion about the stop work, shutdown, notice of citation, et cetera, so I won't go into that. It is important, and from my perspective, to remind folks that 59th Street, which also abuts Watson Farms, has Willis Excavating, the DPW garage, and other businesses very similar, actually exceeding in intensity to the proposed use here, that are immediately adjacent to the entry of their property. Obviously, that's the way I used to come in when I lived at 6040 Honeywell, but I don't believe that impacted my ability to resell my property in 2009. There was discussion about the setback for kennels from this proposed use. Again, a permitted use 100 feet from the property line, about the same distance that the outdoor storage is located here. So I think that's important to remember, that a outdoor kennel run could be located in a very similar circumstance by right. Lots of discussion about traffic. As someone who now lives on the Fort, takes my son to Fall Creek Valley Middle School, I completely understand the traffic situation on 63rd Street. By the plan of operation, there are 5 employee limitation for vehicles. There are 3 CDL vehicles, 3 CDL drivers on this in Mr. Thompson's employment. That's approximately, worst case, highest value, 20 to 30 additional trips a day. Removing 20 to 30 trips, I don't think we'll have an appreciable change on the traffic on 63rd Street especially during the school year, from 7:30 to roughly 9 o'clock. The business plan here is binding. It's a commitment. That commitment is enforceable by the City of Lawrence. It's enforceable by the City of Indianapolis. It's enforceable by residents who live within the notice parameter of this location. That gives an enforcement right that doesn't currently exist to those neighbors. So to the extent there is a violation of that business plan, if this were to be approved, they have a private right of action, which they do not currently have. I think that's an important distinction that's been glossed over on multiple occasions. Outdoor storage is a part of a DA use. It's contemplated, it's discussed, it is part of what happens in DA uses. That's the difference between a DA use and other residential classifications. We think it's an important distinction, again, not included in any of the information here. The vehicles that are located on site and which travel off-site are smaller than the garbage trucks, the recycle trucks, or the box trucks that run through residential neighborhoods like Watson Farms. We think that's an important distinction, again, not discussed. The changes to the property, including the graveling, were not unlawful. That is permitted in a DA district. There's been no citation for that. There seems to be a big deal made out of that, but there's no citation been issued for that. The ability to add that in a DA district is something that is, again, unique to a DA classification. If there are concerns about sex offender lists, those are available. About employees, there's an obligation for anybody required to be on that list to update with their location of employment, which would be at this location. Two last points, and then I will be done. Actually, three. As it relates to asking for a matter to be held in abeyance or stay of a decision, I would agree with Mr. Bellamy's position that requires, first of all, it requires you can continue through with a judicial review, which was not, which was abandoned by the previous during the previous application, and it does make that request of the court. That was not what I indicated. I do give that suggestion to clients on occasion when they come through, that that's a remedy that they have. I did not advise this client on that issue, but as noted, there was somewhat frequent communication with the inspector. I don't believe that the client ever, that the petitioner here ever told them that they had shut down when they in fact had not. There was not any lie. There was no misrepresentation of what was happening at the location. And finally, I would simply note that there's been a significant discussion about this being in the middle of the neighborhood, in the middle of a residential neighborhood. The middle of Watson Farms is where your pool is located. This is at the periphery of your location. You back up to a school which has dozens of buses which idle and have backup beepers and have many of the things that are alleged to occur on this property all the time. It appears that this is the scapegoat for any noise in the neighborhood. There is no splitting of boulders on the property. There is the loud, obnoxious uses at all hours of the day. We don't believe occur, but if they do occur under the current plan of operation, they can occur outside of those hours that we've committed to. And we think, again, that gives you, those commitments give you
Left the conference.
right, which does not currently exist under today. So while this is not the ideal situation from a procedural posture to be re-prosecuting a case, that substantial change criteria is an extra statutory criteria. Whether a judge would uphold that or not, if that was part of the reason for a denial, I can't say, but it is not provided for in state statute. To the extent that there's a common law excuse that it's being utilized here, that's a unique perspective I've never heard argued before today. It is extra statutory, it's not provided by state statute, and we think it should not be included in your consideration tonight. However, we do believe that it's met. The change is not insignificant. To have $8,000 of expenditure to add a fence at this location, we believe is a substantial expenditure. It's something that the client did, the petitioner did in good faith to show what can be done and what would be done if this petition was granted. For all those reasons, we would ask for your favorable vote this evening. I'm happy to answer questions that the board has.
Mr. Russell, I do have a few. What would be the timeline of replacing the spruce trees?
So I think the commitment that we made on the spruce trees is there are some that are dying, acknowledgement. So I think the intention would be as those die,
Join the conference.
they would replace them, or as they become a danger to fall, they would be replaced. So I haven't heard anybody say this is the one and that's the one, but there have been trees added between last year's position and this year, but they would be replaced as necessary.
Okay, the timeline possibly in taking the barn down that is falling.
Okay, so there are There are sheet metal pieces to repair the existing roof of the historic barn that are on site and ready to install. Unfortunately, the petitioner hasn't been able to get a contractor out to repair that. So, and Mr. Thompson can correct me if I'm wrong, the intention is have that sheet metal replaced on the roof, products move from the small barn to the big barn, small barn comes down. So as soon as there could be a contractor on site to remove, to place the replacement, it could be shortly thereafter.
Also, in the commitments, it said trash removal at least weekly. Would this be the type of business bringing stuff back or whatever? I would feel that they would need it for sure, at least weekly, if not twice a week.
Yeah, I think in the heavy time, in the springtime and the fall time, that probably would be necessary. But I think, weekly would be more necessary for most of the year. But in those heavy times, yes, multiple times a week would be fine. They currently use, largely the same residential dumpsters that we do. So they do have other ones on occasion, but generally we'll remove it very quickly.
Did you ever meet with the neighbors?
We did not. I actually emailed Mr. Bellamy on August 1st and didn't receive a response from him until August the 11th when he told me he was too busy to meet with me.
Thank you. Ask the board if they have any questions. Renee, ask.
Hold on.
Okay.
I'm still typing notes.
Okay.
What day did you say contacted you back? I'm sorry, Russell.
On August the 11th.
Okay.
Board, do you have any questions for Mr. Russell?
I do not.
No questions at this time?
No question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll hear from the remonstrators one more time, if you want to come up, Mr. Bellamy.
Again, Jeff Bellamy, for your record, I appreciate the opportunity to come back and address the board and address some of the statements Mr. Brown made. Yes, I was very busy when I last heard from Mr. Brown and asked if there would be the possibility of having more time, and he responded, well, he didn't think his client would want to do that. So we got ready, and we're here in front of you. So you've got the evidence from us, and we've got 20 people who are not working tonight like Russ and I are, and are here to have you explain to them what's different from 2019. What changed? There's a fence, okay? We still have several dead trees. We have testimony that David Strauss can support. Rick Wiles mentioned it. I find it humorous. I find it clever to indicate that the criticism of the evidence given, and it's the only evidence you've got. You have no other evidence about use and value in your record. And you have the opportunity for the people that presented letters last year, who are all realtors and can speak to these issues and talk about opinions of value. And that's what an appraisal is. Mr. Brown knows this. There's cases that say appraisals are opinions of value. And he says, well, shame on the remonstrators. They didn't bring any objective evidence. When did the burden fall to the remonstrators? As I said, he and I are the only two working tonight, along with Larry and Renea. They're all here on their own time. I don't know when it became their obligation to refute his case. He has to meet, with the presentation of evidence, all the required findings of fact. I've never heard the word hardship tonight. I've never heard the words practical difficulty tonight. I've never seen any evidence that supports any of it. None of the findings have been addressed, supported. None of the evidence that's been sitting in the file from a year ago has been refuted. None of it. Then we hear this issue of, well, now the neighbors get more. They have enforceable commitments. I think the last thing these folks want is more enforcement obligations. Do the 20 of you want to have to deal with more enforcement obligations? Is that what you came to tonight, have to do more enforcement work? They're shaking their heads in back and forth, not up and down. So it's a no for all of them. So I want to cede the rest of my time to David Strauss. David's the Watson Farms HOA president. He was here last year. Have him get into some of the issues that the neighborhood has had to cope with and deal with over the last, now, 4 years.
Make it quick, David, okay, because we're only supposed to have 5 minutes,
Okay.
okay?
David Strauss, 5971 Twickenham Drive. To answer your question about the trees, I wanted to note there's probably approximately at least 75 trees, evergreens, that are 20-plus tall, that were full at one time. Now the majority of them are thinned out to maybe the top, so they're all dying. It's going to cost, I mean, if he doesn't have a plan and he's going to, you know, replace them as needed, when is as needed? They're all needed now. 70, I mean, seriously, and then he's planting trees, evergreen trees, that are 4 foot tall. That's going to be 20 years until they're back to where they were, to give any type of screening on that point. My concern is, the other concern is him following through. You know, he says he'll follow these guidelines, but he can't even follow the rules, which is to stop working. And, you know, to one of our neighbors that, you know, or sent an email in stating that, hey, let's just leave him alone, let him work. He needs to make a living. We're not against him making a living, but do it elsewhere, not behind our neighborhood, where if our home, a home is your biggest purchase. It's an investment. And when you want to go and sell it, you want to make some money on it. So when you're retired, you have money to live on. And so it is affecting those values. If someone is going to come in and look at your home and say, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to live behind a landscape company. Look at that. They've got rocks, they've got mulch, they've got skids galore. Oh, they have this little fence, but then they have this huge barn that is falling apart. What is it going to look like in 5 years? But I don't want to know. I don't want to live there. So those people that are directly on that street, and again, one of them is a rental. The other one basically threatened me. So I wouldn't even suggest that one to even be allowed, because I don't know. That's a whole nother issue there. But and to Jeff's point, we don't want to have to be the people, the sheriffs, so to speak, watching this. And we ask that the board consider to deny this, and also how we're going to move forward with this to ensure that it does take place, the rules, that he does stop work if it's decided. We'd like to know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, does the board feel that they have enough evidence, or do they feel that they should see the evidence that has been presented tonight? Because there has been some handouts tonight. Is the board ready to vote, or?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
I'm ready as well.
Okay, so we're going to
We
do
just want to
a,
make sure that everybody,
was ready. I'm going to do a roll call vote on petition 20 LUV 07-9905 East 63rd Street. Variance of use to allow for portions of property to be utilized as part of a landscaping contractor company in addition to residential uses. By roll call, Becky Lytle,
no.
Tom Crouch,
Tom votes no.
Stephen Hall,
No.
Eugene West,
No.
Desmond Woods, did you make it on? Okay. I've heard him coming in and out. And Mark Sanders.
No.
Okay, it is unanimous. The petition has been denied. The Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned.